Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Celeste, and this channel is all about increasing your frequency and activating your highest potential. So with that comes holistic wellness and nutrition, consciousness and spirituality. So if you're into that type of stuff, like the video, maybe subscribe. Okay, so today we are talking about the awakening process. What is the awakening process? And I'm going to give you guys a few tips as we go through the awakening process. So if you clicked on this video, you're probably either experiencing the awakening, have experienced, so you are awakened, or you're curious about what's going on with the people around you because things are just not adding up. Okay, so what is the awakening experience? It is a drastic shift of consciousness, and it's going on worldwide, okay? So if you think about, for example, the Mayan calendar and so many other prophecies, there was an end of the world in 2012. In the actual Mayan calendar, there was no more information after 2012. Now, why is this? Because there was an old way of being, or an old earth that energetically no longer exists. Okay, so stay with me. I know it sounds a little funky. Stay with me. So that old era was closed. It was like a chapter that was done, and that book went to the side. And we've opened up a new book. And this new book, call it the new era. So this is the awakening. Think about it in this way. Between dark and light. Lack of light or light coming in. So in the dark era, before 2012, there was more darkness on Earth. Okay, a lot of us were blinded. That's why you always hear like there's veils, right? You feel like you're asleep. What are you asleep to? Actually living reality for what it is, not for the programs and the belief systems that have been given to us for us to incorporate in our being and then regurgitate and continue forth. So once 2012 happened, there was a huge wave of people awakening. Now, this process has been going on for many decades. So don't get me wrong, there's a lot of many older, wiser people, and even decades before that, people have been in the awakening process, and the truth has been revealed to these people. The thing that is different now is that the entire world as a collective is like being initiated into this new era. So that's why there's this rise of spirituality, and there's this rise of consciousness, and people asking more questions and getting into like mystical or esoteric knowledge and wisdom and questioning, right? Questioning the structures that used to be religion and government, because people are awakening. The veils are thinning. So imagine you had like very thick curtains that were between our vision and reality. So we weren't able to explain reality for what it was. We just thought there was things going on, and we just went on with the flow. I hope that makes sense. So like a really easy, simple concept, right? I remember when I was a child, this is not against meat eating. I'm going to say that as a warning. I am not against meat eaters. I remember eating chicken. I mean, I'm Argentine, so I grew up like, I think meat was a religion. We had to eat meat, you know? It was like, you're not acceptable in society if you don't eat meat. So I just grew up eating meat. I never thought, there was a huge veil in front of my consciousness. I never actually connected, and this sounds crazy, the fact that I was eating a live animal. I just ate meat every single day. Chicken, fish, any type of animal I would just consume, right? I remember vividly the day that I made that connection, and it sounds crazy. Like, what do you mean you didn't think about? No, I didn't think about the actual chicken or the cow. I just ate whatever was in front of me. And then the veil started to thin, and all of a sudden it hit me in my early 20s. And I'll never forget that day because it was a huge slap in the face. Now, whether you eat meat or not, or whatever happens, that's completely out of this conversation. The point is that the veil became so thin, I was able to actually decipher what was in front of me and now make a choice for myself outside of the structure that I grew up in, outside of the programs that were given to me. And this is exactly what's going on with society. We're just kind of robots, kind of moving around, doing what we were told to do, never really connecting the dots. Well, now we're in this new era of consciousness where things are clicking together. We're starting to make sense in a whole different way. So what you have maybe done, or what your parents have done, or your generations have done for decades or hundreds of years, it's now being questioned. And it's not good or bad, or it just is. There's connections being made. So that would have to be like my prime example for what it means for veils thinning, and for us as human beings finally being able to create a new understanding of what is actually happening. And then on top of that, making a decision for myself, for yourself, right? Like, now that you have the full information, now you can make your own decision, right? It's not like it was just given to you and then you just follow the rules and you just go on life asleep, right? And so that's why a lot of people say it's an awakening. You are literally waking up. It's like you were in a dream, okay? And you've just been sleeping. I mean, you went to school, you just did what you were supposed to do. Maybe you followed religions and structure, whatever the case, right? All of a sudden, you just start to wake up and question and say, that doesn't resonate with me. I don't feel good about that. That doesn't sit well with me. And instead of just looking the other way and hoping that it'll go away, you actually face it. And that's what I want to talk about today, because so much of this path is that decision between, are you going to face what's coming up for you, or are you going to do the easier path, which happens a lot, and just look the other way and not make it a big deal? Those are two huge, huge differences. Okay, so looking down at my notes, it is literally like layers have been holding us down. Now, I want to share with you also, I physically have felt this. So aside from actually making neurological connections and like being able to bring things together, when I go into very deep states of meditation, I'm able to, it's a very palpable experience for me. It's very real. It's very textured. So many, many times I have felt the programs. I hate to make the connection, but it's like the Matrix, right? I don't want to get lost in that, but there's a lot of truth in the Matrix, the movie. So I have felt it deep within the cells of the body, how we have all been programmed. And I have felt the heaviness and the darkness and how it's literally bogged us down. Like, if you could just imagine, like, you know, like that type of feeling is like the basis and the foundation of so much of humanity up until this point. And so I have also felt going from that darkness, transmuting so much of that darkness, and it hurts, guys. It's fucking painful, okay? I felt the pain in meditation, but I've also felt it in like live, you know, real life. It's painful either way. I feel like the meditation was like a precursor of like, hey, this is what's happening. And it's dark. It's dark. So in order to be able to transmute and do the alchemy of turning the darkness into the light, which is the process that we're going through in awakening, right? To bring consciousness to that process is the awakening process, because we can choose to stay held down and go on with what we've been told, or we can step into it fully and say, I'm not okay with this, and literally push everything away with all the pain and all the might that you have, and rip apart those structures that no longer serve you. And I'm a huge advocate of this. A lot of my mentorship work is on this specific part, because you can't continue on with the new before releasing the old. I talk a lot about cellular, outside of cellular programming, cellular stamp. It's like there was a stamp that was given to you at birth. And this comes from the womb. This comes from your parents. You can't not be susceptible to this. And so that stamp is generational. And we just live out these programs and these belief systems we don't even know. So when they start to come up and the question starts to come up, that's the opportunity that you got to dive in. I'm so passionate about it. I think I'm going off on a tangent, but that's the awakening. Like, the awakening is the choice, right? Not only are you bringing consciousness to the fact that that is not okay with me, or that doesn't resonate with me, it's the next step after that. What am I doing about it? How am I going to change this? How am I going to no longer experience this part of this reality, right? Or just maybe experience it, but from a whole new perception, right? You don't always have to let go or throw out, right? A lot of it is just transmutation internally to be able to see things from a different perspective. Okay, so I do a lot of that work in mentorship, and it's very deep, it's very alchemical, it's very energetic. And I highly, highly suggest doing that type of work. Okay. So now what? You know what the awakening is. Now, where do we go from here? Okay, so how do you know if you are in this process? One, if you've clicked on this video, like I said, you're likely in the process. You're awakening if you're bringing consciousness to this topic. Number two, you're actually not willing to stay with the current structure. What do I mean by that? Okay. You notice the structures that are in place right now. And I'm going to make this personal, and this is not to say that this should be your opinion, but just to express me. I know that where the government is not in line with my values. I know where a lot of religious institutions are not aligned with my values. I know where the educational system, etc., the work environment, all these things that I don't necessarily align with. It's not a bad thing. And if you do align with them, that's great, right? There's no bad or wrong. This is an example. So I see these structures, whatever they are. For you, it could be your home structure, what you have inherited. It could be your daily habits. Like, you inherited your daily habits and you don't even know why you do them, right? It could be that simple. But you know that you're not in alignment to them. And how do you know? They don't feel good. Or you want to question and nobody answers you. Or they just don't feel good. They just don't feel good. You're like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. It doesn't feel right. That's how you know you're in the awakening process, because you're not okay with what is, and you're also willing to question it. Okay? So there has to be something else, right? You're not a victim to any of this stuff. If you see something that you're not okay with, it's your responsibility to take a different route. Okay? Also, last part of actually knowing if you're part of the awakening process is you actually prefer transparency and honesty. And you prefer to be in alignment to your own values as opposed to being in alignment to somebody else's values. I'll give you a quick example, because I feel like a lot of these things, the examples really serve justice. So my first job out of college, believe it or not, I studied economics and statistics and international relations. Crazy. My first job was with a chemical company. Mind you, I was into nutrition and wellness and fitness and movement. And the first job that was willing to give me a salary worked with chemicals, like toxic, horrible chemicals that were being imported from Asia and South America and all these different parts of the world. And my job was to do the statistics of all this stuff. And at some point, I woke up I didn't last more than a year and a half. I woke up after about a year and I said, enough. I am never, no matter what it takes, going to help a company put more chemicals in our food. Like, that was my job. Meanwhile, I had a passion for wellness and nutrition, and I was studying to be a health coach at the time. So something clicked. And I swear to you guys, within about 3 to 4 months, I ended up quitting that job. I took the risk. This will be another video. Point is, I decided I'm not in alignment to this. And I don't care if I have to lose my salary. I don't care what's going to happen. I'm not doing it, period. And you don't have to be so intense, right? But if you know that you're not in alignment to something, and you're showing up to that something every day or whatever it is, every week or every month, if you know you're out of alignment and you're willing to do something that's out of the norm to stand for your values, then you are awakening. You are taking conscious responsibility for who you are showing up in the world as. Okay? So kudos to you. All right. Now, there's two types of awakenings. I love this stuff. There's two types of awakenings that happen. So there could be two ways. One could be slow and steady. And if you're on the slow and steady path, congratulations to you. That is awesome. Do not take it for granted. If you're slow and steady, that means somebody came to you and either woke you up, or you are slowly reading books and like doing these, steps and starting to do mindfulness and yoga and this and that. Keep it up, because if you don't, you will be slapped in the face with the awakening. Now, the other one is a sudden awakening, and I can honestly say that was my experience. I was already into mindfulness and consciousness, and so I was already doing that stuff. It was like slow and steady. I was preparing my body, my vehicle, my energy body for something more, because I always knew there was something more. And just one day, I saw a video on YouTube. It triggered my emotional body, and I had a downpour of understanding and knowings and information. So those are just two different types of ways. If you are on that sudden path, trust. Just trust. Be gentle with yourself. I think if you're on either path, it's just one is a little bit more shocking than the other, but we're all in this together. Okay, and also know that everybody will have to awaken. So a lot of this process may just start with you. You may be the only person in your entire family or in your entire neighborhood or city or state that you are actually becoming aware of this stuff. Know that nobody can escape this. And what I mean by that is that you may feel on this path that you are alone, or there's no one that's understanding you, or like no one's ever going to see things from your perspective. And that may be true for the now, for this now moment. But just know that every single soul that's on this earth plane will have to experience the awakening process at some point of their trajectory. Now, that means that maybe they're not doing it this lifetime. They may have to come back another lifetime. But you cannot escape this process. If you're on earth right now, you will have to go through this process. So just do the work now. Just show up and do the work. And you're not alone. At this point, the world is lit up with light workers and people that are awake. It's just completely lit up. You're definitely not alone. I don't care where you are in the world. Okay? All right. So now what? Okay. So you're awakened. You're in the awakening process. You're like, what the hell's going on? Or you've made connections. Now what? Number one, I'm a huge advocate of this. Take responsibility. Take responsibility for yourself, okay? You've awakened. You've realized that you are no longer a victim of your circumstances. You cannot blame other people for your life. So it's time to take responsibility for your belief systems, for your perceptions, for the way that you treat yourself and the way that you treat others, for the power of your word, for the things that you speak, for the things that you think. And this goes deep. This is a lot of the work also that I do in my mentorship, because we forget how powerful we are. Here's the thing. When you're in the awakening process, you are literally awakening the God force within. right? So human, hue is the tone, like hue. That's the tone of the universe. That's the tone of creation. Whether that resonates with you or not, it's completely irrelevant. The point is that human means the God force within man, okay? Man, woman, within being, right? You are awakening that potential inside. And now that you're awakening to that potential, you have power over your creation, over your relationships, over how you show up for yourself and for the world around you. And so it's like one of those things, right? Once you learn it, you can't unlearn it. So taking responsibility for your life, no matter where you are, what's going on, and invoking that God force within in order to rip apart these patterns and these belief systems that are not in alignment to who you are. And having the guts to do that, because that is hard. That is so hard, right? It's so hard to go against the norm. It's so hard to go against what's been established for decades or millennia, okay? But you have that responsibility now. It's yours, and you can't step away from it. You can, you're just going to live an awful life, because then you're just like hiding from life. It just doesn't work that way. Okay. Another thing that I wanted to say is there's 2 tracks that happen once the awakening process starts. It's very common for people to start the awakening process through conspiracy, and that's one of the ways that I started actually. I started to read a lot on government, and I was also studying it, but a lot of the conspiracy stuff, and there's a lot of stuff out there now, ufology and all these different things, which is great. Be mindful of how it's affecting you. So if you're reading this conspiracy stuff or watching videos and you finish this stuff and you feel anger and rage and you're just pissed off, but then you're not doing anything with that energy, right? Because you have to transmute it. If you stay with that, then you're likely going to give it out into the world, right? That's the last thing you want to do, right? So notice how you're taking in information, what quality of information you're taking in, and allow yourself to integrate it and transmute it before putting it out into the world, okay? So if you're into the conspiracy stuff, into those things, that's cool. Be mindful of how it's affecting your mind, your body, and your energy. And then the other way is not so much the conspiracy or the dark or the ufology, but the light, right? And that's a big thing in this community. Like people being attracted to the light and only wanting the light. And this is big. This is big. So a lot of times people will claim to understand spirituality or claim to actually live in coherence or in alignment to higher values because they carry crystals or because they meditate a lot or because they wear white clothing. Okay, and I'm saying this stuff because it's real. Like, it's real. Be careful. Now, listen, I love crystals. If I gave you a footage of my home right now, you'd be mesmerized by how many crystals I have. I freaking love them, okay? Meditation, I love meditation. I freaking love it. You know, I can meditate for hours, okay? What was that? White clothing? I freaking love white clothing, right? So it's like, it's that black and white. It's both sides, right? Like, that stuff is not bad. It's just, where is your ego within all of that? Are you doing the work? Are you showing up authentically? Are you being vulnerable to the truths that are coming up for you? Or have you gotten into this spiritual, what I would say like commerce? It's the spiritual industry and it looks so pretty and it's so nice and easy. If you're speaking to anybody about spirituality and they cannot share not one hard part of their awakening process or their voyage or their experience, I'm just going to tell you to question it. Just question it. Because if you're already an angel, if you're already pristine, then you probably wouldn't be on the earth realm because we as souls choose to come to earth in order to clear our karma and clear our DNA, in order to then transmute it and face all the dark craziness, and then start the walk towards, just start, like crawling, like you're barely living and you're just like crawling towards the light. It's really like, it's intense, you know? So those are the two pathways, either one, right? If you feel like you're super into like the white and the crystals and this and that and the woo-woo and like, it's so much fun and so pretty, but you haven't really experienced anything deep and hard, just ask yourself if you're really being truthful. If you're really being truthful about your experience and how you're showing up for people. Yeah. Ask people around you. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard because we're blinded by the light. Just like we're blinded by the dark, we can also be blinded by the light. And that's something that I've had to learn myself because of the activations and the spiritual gifts and insights that I've received, it's very easy for me to just be blinded by that light. But to be willing to come back down and really experience life for what it is and work through a lot of things, that's when you realize that there's so much work left to do, right? So just be mindful. You know, like too much of anything is never good. Like too much dark or too much light, it's just not balanced, right? Right now we're in the world of yin and yang. It's a duality. It's a dualistic realm. And there's two sides of every coin. So just be mindful of that. All right. Action steps. Let's just go straight into it. So, actions. Aside from taking responsibility of how you're showing up and what's in line with your values or not, take responsibility for your mind, body, and spirit. Whatever that means for you. Simple, guys. Your mind. What are your thoughts? What are you letting in? And what are you allowing to just regurgitate? And like really settle in, right? I've been working a lot, like listening a lot to the power of the subconscious mind. So radio, TV, news, podcast, what do you bring it in? Because your subconscious mind is so powerful. So powerful. And so what conversations are you having? What thoughts? How are you doing your self-talk? We all talk to ourselves. We all have thoughts. What does that feel like? What does that sound like? Take responsibility for it. If there's things that do not serve you, check them. Body, easy. Move. Any type of movement works. Just move. If you're not moving daily, please start to move daily. Even if it's like a 5-minute stretch routine in the morning. Like, move your body, especially if you're sitting in a desk all day, okay? And aside from the movement for the body, food is huge. I'm not even going to go into that. I'll ramble on forever. Food. Be mindful of what you're putting inside your body, just like hopefully you're mindful of what you're putting into your brain. And lastly, the spirit. And you can give it any name that you like. Your energy body, your chakras, whatever. How are you working with this field? And maybe you're not, but your energy and your spirit and your soul, like the realness, right? What lies inside of you, like, are you feeding that with your passions, or are you not feeding that and going against what your heart and your soul desires? A big thing I talk about in this process is really aligning to your passions, because your passions are what's going to light you up. It's going to light up information. It's going to light up this frequency. Maybe you don't like meditation, so you don't meditate, but you go into this meditative state when you're in your passion, right? So how are you feeding your soul, your spirit, your heart, your energy body? And also, are you cleansing it, right? Are you receiving any type of healing sessions? Like, what are you doing to take responsibility for that part, okay? Great place to also start inner child work. If you're new to inner child work, or you're interested in learning more, leave a message below. I'm happy to do a video about that. it's just a great place to start. Inner child work. The programming that you received when you were little and you were completely, your subconscious was completely open to whatever was around. And you just brought those patterns in and now you live with them. So check your inner child work. Another one, forgiveness and compassion. Being able to forgive, and this could be really tough. It's not just, oh, I'm sorry, or, oh, I understand, right? I'm talking about deep, deep forgiveness. I'm talking about that thing that your parents or your loved one or your ex-partner, your relationships are so fundamental in this part, guys. Forgiveness. Like, what are your sentiments and your emotions and your feelings and thoughts about your ex-partners or your family members? How about that family member that betrayed you or betrayed somebody else in your family? All these things, right? Forgiveness and compassion. And it's not done in a day. It's just not. The work is so deep and it takes so much energy and so much love. And so much of this process is literally opening up your heart. And the way that you open up your heart is through forgiveness. But in order to forgive, you must understand. You must put yourself in that person's shoes and really go through the entire process. So being able to forgive. Think about it like this. You don't want to leave this earth with any type of heaviness in your soul. It's just not worth it. It's not worth it. And that's what I have for you for the awakening process. So that was a lot. I'm really passionate about this work, especially as I see so many people around me and around the world getting more interested in this stuff. So if you have questions or if you have comments, I would love to hear from you. I'd love to work with you if you're in this process and you just need accountability. I have to say that a huge help for me for this entire process has been my husband. He's been like my rod, my lightning rod. He has literally held me upright. Literally. I mean, I can't even say something other than that. Now, if you don't have that lightning rod, right? Maybe you're in a situation where you're just surrounded by family that is completely asleep or whatever the case may be, and you need more of an accountability and more of that support. I would love to help you. I'd love to work with you. It's a long process. It's many, many years of even just the precursor of walking this conscious path, is being able to change your perspective of who you are as a soul and what you're here to do, and actually like activating your highest potential as a soul. And that's so much of my work is really clearing out all of this stuff in order to get to the point of starting to activate that potential, those hidden gifts and talents that we're just like waiting. The soul is like thirsty to express to the world. So anyway, enough of that. I'd love to hear from you guys. Have an awesome day, and see you guys soon.